This is 1360 AM. WNJC, Washington Township, Philadelphia. Philadelphia's Renaissance radio station. Brought to you from Forsyth Broadcasting. Or listen to us at WNJCradio.com.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Avacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Drink my wine.
can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet via our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And joining me on this Friday afternoon, as she does on Friday afternoons, is my very good friend, Anna Little. Anna, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Glad to be here, Rick, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, too, Anna. It's a beautiful, beautiful, quite warm summer's afternoon here on the East Coast. Big puffy clouds in the sky, warm. Might get some thunder showers later, but what else do you expect? It's summer. So here we are. So, Anna, before we get going here, why don't we run down our list of guests, okay? Who are you going to be speaking with today?
Well, at 3:35, I have the honor of speaking with Terrence Jeffrey. He's the editor-in-chief of CNSNews.com, one of our favorite news outlets. And prior to that, he had served for more than a decade as the editor of Human Events, which obviously is quite a feather in his cap where conservatives are concerned. He's an editorial writer for the Washington Times, and in 1992, he served as Issues and Research Director for Pat Buchanan's first Republican presidential campaign. So we're going to be very excited to speak with him today. The topic that I believe he's going to talk to us about is the percentage of Americans on welfare. It seems that there's an HHS report that indicates that we are at a record high. So we're very, very excited to speak to Terrence about that fact because we need to do something about that. Mm-hmm. And obviously we think our president has a lot to do with that in his economic policies.
Right.
At 4:05, though, I also have the honor of speaking with Steve Wilson. Steve Wilson is a writer and a journalist. He serves as the Mississippi Bureau Chief for Watchdog.org. And he had begun his career as a sports writer, working for Mobile Press Register in Alabama, LaGrange Daily News in Georgia, Highlands Today in Florida, the Combe Enterprise Journal in Mississippi, and the Biloxi Sun-Herald in Mississippi, Vicksburg Post in Mississippi. So he had a varied, obviously, experience before coming to Watchdog. His bachelor's degree is in journalism with a minor in political science from the University of Alabama, and he served 4+ years in the United States Coast Guard after his high school graduation, and he's a native of Mobile, Alabama. And he's going to speak to us today about voter fraud. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a legal motion that actually alleges voter fraud in Mississippi's U.S. Senate race, and he's written an article about that. So we're very excited to talk about that. Voter fraud is a hot topic among conservatives. We know that the people often have elected conservatives to office, but they've been duped by voter fraud used by the liberals on the other side.
Yeah, now it's being used by the liberals on the Republican side. So there you go, Anna. And at 4:35, I'm going to be speaking with Dan Gaynor. Dan is the Vice President for Business and Culture of the Media Resource Center. Dan is a veteran editor with more than 2 decades experience in print and online media. And Dan is going to be joining us to talk about an article that was on the Business and Media Institute website. Media praise BBC censorship of climate skeptics. So, you know, we love to talk about this idea of man-made global warming here on the Conservative Commandos radio show and climate change and all these other farces that the liberals talk about because we are the other side of these debates. So we're going to be speaking with Dan Gaynor from the Media Resource Center at 4:35. Anna, what's on your radar screen this week, my friend?
Well, I have been watching in horror as ISIS continues to gain ground in the Middle East. And I think what's most significant this week in the news is that it is believed, and I think confirmed at this point, that at the very least, ISIS has obtained possession from a plant in Iraq the uranium that could be used for dirty bombs. Now, there's speculation as to whether this uranium is radioactive and whether they have the materials necessary to transform it into radioactive uranium as the time comes. But regardless, it's very, very bad news. I think Americans, due to the lack of leadership in our government right now on the world stage, are being caught off guard by this. Should not have been. The signs and signals have been there internationally. Many of those with experience and particular knowledge of what goes on in the Middle East as far as policy and politics had warned us about this, but I believe that there are extreme and violent jihadist Muslims in this form of ISIS that actually believe they have a caliphate at this point, and so therefore they are strengthened in their resolve to go ahead and annihilate the infidels, and those would be you and me, Rick, this country, anyone that doesn't believe in the right-wing jihadist goals and extreme right Sharia law. So I think we really need to pay attention to this. So listeners, please Google all you can about what's going on in the Middle East and talk it up on social media, because we're missing the boat here and we are going to pay for it with American lives, whether it be at home or abroad. And if we're talking about nuclear capability with these right-wingers who even Al-Qaeda thought were too far to the right, you know, we're in trouble. We do not want another attack on U.S. soil. We've got to do something about it. And the only way we're going to do anything about it under this administration is if we, the people, take charge and lobby the electeds who stand to lose their positions if they don't act. And then that pressure becomes the reason that this administration takes action. We've learned that over the last, term or going into the second now, you know. It's been very upsetting to watch. And, you know, I'm hoping that we stand up and do something about this, listeners.
Hey, Anna, where is it suspected that they're getting this nuclear fuel from?
From Iraq.
Iraq.
From Iraq.
Oh, well,
Yes.
was this what Saddam Hussein sent into Syria after or prior to the Second Gulf War?
Well, it could be. I know there's also weapons that they're receiving through Syria. They've also been, as they conquer these sections of the Middle East, they are taking from the government military the weaponry that's been provided, and a lot of that is state-of-the-art from the United States, especially in the case of Iraq. So, I think we have a very formidable enemy who is in action and certainly enthusiastic given their recent victories. It is true that eventually the people in these countries will get tired of being occupied by these very violent jihadists with their commitment to extreme Sharia law and the violence that goes with that. But there's no one for them to turn to. There's no leadership there in the region. And, of course, with America having withdrawn, essentially, there's no one for them to turn to. So I don't think that there's any legitimate or effective challenge to ISIS right now if the United States does not find a way to re-engage. And it's very difficult given the recent pattern of events, especially noting the withdrawal and the public policy with regard to, leave these countries to police themselves. And, it's just it's a scary thing to watch, Rick. Very scary.
Well, Anna, as you say, there's a leadership vacuum there, and there's, I think, some very good reasons why there's a leadership vacuum there. Let's talk for a minute about Iraq. When Saddam Hussein was in power, he would kill anyone who showed any potential for leadership. Same thing can be said in Syria. The Assad government will definitely wipe out anybody who may be a threat to them and who may show leadership potential. I think you could probably say the same thing in Iran. I doubt that the powers there, the Ayatollahs there, will let anyone challenge their power. So that in and of itself is a reason why there's a leadership power. So when the United States pulls out and leaves this vacuum, it becomes another Vietnam, and a little. As soon as we're gone, our enemies walk back in, and all those thousands of lives that were sacrificed in Iraq, American lives, the billions of dollars of U.S. treasure that was spent in Iraq, all that is gone. And all this happens, Anna, because you got politicians who are pulling the strings of the military, telling the military how to win a war. Anna, politicians do not win wars. Militaries win wars. Politicians lose wars. That's exactly what happened here. Hey, Anna, we got to go to a break. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, as we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Around the world on the internet via our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget to check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioshow.com and CCRShow.com. Don't go away, Anna and I will be right back.
They say I'm nasty, but oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. EnjoyAbaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
EnjoyAbaco.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader. And program notes, if you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show, next Monday afternoon, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. That's vigilantlibertyradio.us. And don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Now, this is a toll call, but there's no extra charges for the call. So make sure you use a telephone that you have unlimited long-distance access, and you'll be all set. And I wanted to get into a little debate with you, actually, today.
Okay.
Because I have my feelings, and I have an idea you're going to not necessarily agree with my feelings on this, but
we'll find out.
I want to talk for a little bit with you about this immigration issue.
Okay.
Now here we got 65,000 minors, children, in Obama orphanages in the desert southwest border states, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. Obama wants to send these children to different camps all across the United States. He wants $3.7 billion to deal with this problem, a problem that he created. He says, you give me the $3.7 billion and I'll work with you about deporting these children. Okay? So I say, Anna, all he wants is more money, more money, more money. That's the only thing he can do. Anna, $3.7 billion is the equivalent of $71,000 per child that's in these Obama orphanages at the present time. I say for about $150, you can buy them all one-way bus tickets back to their homes. Now, we got another problem here, Anna, and it's called Mexico. Mexico is allowing these children to cross their borders, coming up through Mexico into the United States. 75% of these children in these Obama orphanages, these Obama concentration camps in the desert Southwest, are children from Central and South America. And I am proposing this, and this is where I think you're going to disagree with me. I am calling for the end of all immigration into this country, both legal and illegal. I mean, shut the doors until we can solve this problem. I am calling for a total ban of travel, traffic, tourism, trade, aid, anything going to Mexico until the Mexican government steps up and stop this flow of trafficking through Mexico coming to the United States. I say, Anna, that's the only thing that we can do. I call on Congress. I call on Congress to stop, to shut our borders, to cut off trade, travel, tourism, funding, aid, anything going to Mexico until this tide of illegals, to stem this tide of illegals coming into this country and to ensure that they're going to go home.
Well, you're right. I'm going to disagree with you on that. I think you've got a situation down there and it needs to be addressed. I think that Mexico has responsibility in a large part for that situation at the border. I think there are other countries and news outlets in other countries who are equally responsible, but Mexico being uncooperative with the United States in dealing with the immediate problem at the border, there should be some repercussions. And so, there has to be discussion of potential sanctions until the cooperation can be established. This is a matter of national security. You've got M13 gang members who have been identified among these children who are, frankly, workers in their home countries. What we consider a child in the United States is already considered an adult by age in these countries. And so whether you agree with that or not, you need to understand that they are not being sent here as orphans. They're being sent here to get a work permit so that they can work here and send U.S. dollars back home, because those countries do not allow folks in the rural parts of their countries to survive. They come and interfere with their subsistence farming, and they don't allow them to sell their crops. And, it's just an unlivable situation. And rather than fight those battles within their own borders at home, they're sending their children, designee, whoever it is from the family, out here to make U.S. dollars so that they can survive back home. That's what this is about. The gangs, on the other hand, they're recruiting and they're expanding. And while this government does not recommend that their asylum be granted to the victims of these gangs because they're considered delinquents rather than political organizations, I will tell you they are a significant threat to government operations in many countries from which these children are coming. And M13 has been identified, and because they're under the age of 18, but they are members of these gang organizations, they're entering this country. That has got to be stopped immediately. And, you know, I think there has to be a way to address this, and I don't think that we are without power within the judicial system. I mean, obviously you have to hire an ample number of judges. There has been a hiring freeze. Recently. I mean,
50,
there's
Anna,
that can be done.
Anna, $3.7 billion to solve this problem, $71,000 per child. You know, Anna, I hear you. Anna,
problem right now. He does not need to hogtie the American people and come up with these camps and hold the procedures over our heads in order to extort money. That should not be necessary. The system as it exists right now needs to function, and there are ways that these issues could be addressed today. They've got to move quickly, and they've got to use the facilities that are available. You know, if they decide they want to put these people on the docket and they want to move these cases, there are ways to do that. I've been doing this immigration work for 25 years. I have seen when a judge wants to move a docket, they move a docket. When they're not interested in moving the docket, it gets pretty bogged down. And there are reasons behind when judges move things and when they don't, and some of them are related to support staff issues and whatnot. But as far as I see, you know, you've got a humanitarian crisis here, and it needs to be addressed on multi-levels at the same time. I don't believe sealing the border is it's out of the question. People who are trying to legally cross have to be able to do that.
Anna, right after the break, we're going to be speaking with our guest, Terrence P. Jeffrey. He's the editor-in-chief at CNSnews.com. The topic you're going to be talking about with him is about the percentage of American on welfare hits a record high. Now, I think that a lot of this, Anna, is because of the cheap labor that's coming in from Central and South America. I hear you, Anna. You have a lot more experience on this than I do. You are an immigration attorney. You say that these people are coming up here for money, for employment opportunities.
Surely. They're coming to work, that's for sure.
I say that's another reason why we have to stop it. The record number of Americans on welfare needs to be cut down. The way you do that, Anna, one of the ways you do that is you cut off this illegal flow of immigrants into this country. That's number one. Number two.
Now, you've got to also address the fact that Americans are entitlement-minded, and you've got no work requirement with welfare.
Well, they don't have to. You're right there, but that's a piece, Anna.
Some of these jobs that these immigrants are filling, they wouldn't take because they're either equal to or less than what they're getting off of welfare.
Anna, I hear you, and I agree. There's no one solution to any problem. I'm saying part of this welfare problem is the fact of these people that are coming across the borders. Now, you say it's for employment opportunities. I say it is because they want to become American citizens.
I don't think some of them care whether they
I know some of them don't, but I think a large percent of them do.
They want to work.
Hey, Anna, we're going to have to continue this at another time because we are up against the break. You're listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia. The way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet via our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. Mr. John Forsyth Jr., our own Silent John, working the boards. Anna and I will be right back with Terrence P. Jeffries.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Benier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia. The way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And Anna, we do have our next guest with us, a gentleman we love having here on the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. And I always say, we get our news from CNS News, so should everyone. And with that, Anna Little, please make our introduction.
The honor is mine. Listeners, we get the honor of speaking with Terrence P. Jeffrey this afternoon. He's the editor-in-chief of CNSNews.com. Prior to that, he served for more than a decade as the editor of Human Events, where he's now editor-at-large. Terry was also an editorial writer for the Washington Times, And in 1992, he served as an Issues and Research Director for Pat Buchanan's first Republican presidential campaign. Terry, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad that you took the time to come on because we wanted you to join us today to discuss your recent article on CNSnews.com, which comes from the Right Views Right Now blog. And the article is about the HHS report, and it indicates that the percentage of Americans on welfare is hitting a record high. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your article?
Well, every year by law, the Department of Health and Human Services is required to put out a report calculating the number of people who are quote-unquote on welfare. And they actually take a pretty narrow view of what welfare means. To them, it's people who live in a household that is recipient of any one of three government benefits: a temporary assistance to needy families program, the supplemental security income program, which also is disability, and the supplemental nutrition assistance program, which is commonly known as food stamps. So they have a 3-year lag time on that. So the most recent year they've calculated, which is in their current 2014 report, is 2011. And it turns out that in 2011, 23.1% of Americans were living in households that were receiving one or more of those three federal government programs. That's the highest percentage ever by that measure of welfare. So as of 2011, according to HHS, we had the highest percentage of Americans ever on welfare.
That's not good news. I mean, we don't want to be in a situation where we're increasing the number of people that are depending upon a tax dollar in order to eat and to survive. So I guess we better start looking at some of the factors that go into this. And, I do have the HHS report up. I got it off of CNSnews.com. So if you want to go look at it, you can do that by going to CNSnews.com. And I think if you look for the HHS report or if you look for Terry Jeffrey's article, you'll be able to pull it up. Now, Terry, there are a couple of graphs and charts in here. I mean, I see the first one pretty much diagrams what's been going on since about the 1990s. I guess it begins in 1993 and goes through 2011. And, you've got a little dip in there around 2000, 2001, but it just seems to be almost steadily going up. Since then. Right,
it has. In fact, the data goes back to 1993. Prior to that, HHS has not calculated what the percentage is. My guess is it never, even prior to that, was never higher than it was now, because when you go back to the early 60s, some of these programs didn't even exist. These are basically programs that came into being with the Great Society and LBJ. But from 1994, this report, by the way, is put out pursuant to a law that was enacted in 1994. It was sponsored by Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was a Democrat, but it was someone who understood that welfare programs could be a problem and breed government dependency. So he wanted the government to actually measure it and promote it. Yeah, they did good. This measure of welfare went down to a nadir in 2000, and since then it's been going up. And especially since the recession started at the end of 2007, it's been going up. Yeah. Even after the recession ended in 2009, it continued to go up. And when you talk about indicators, the report makes a very candid point that they think there is a connection between children being born to unmarried mothers and welfare dependency. And in fact, according to the report, 38% of all children under 5 in the United States are on one of these three or all three of these welfare programs. That's almost 40% of the kids, preschoolers in the United States, are on welfare. Mm-hmm. And that correlates with the fact that over the last 5 years, at least 40% of the babies born in the United States were born to unwed mothers. And, I have a chart in the story that graphs that out since 1940, and it's truly unbelievable, the trend that's going on in our country there.
Yeah, and I see that. I'm looking at from 1940 to 2012 is the breadth of years that you analyze. And I'm wondering what it is that encourages that. I mean, I guess it's the breakdown of the family, right? And obviously, unmarried mothers, I mean, they're trying to both work and take care of kids. And obviously, the analysis in the charts up here about the ages of the children are very indicative. it seems like the highest percentage of children on welfare is in the age group 0 to 5, and it certainly reduces as those kids get older and they're going to school, which makes sense if you've got a single-parent household, right?
Right. I'll tell you something. Earlier this year, I did some reporting on a related phenomena, which is employment. President Obama and the Democrats are always saying that conservatives or Republicans have a war on women. Now, if you really go and you look at the data that explains the economic realities of America in terms of American women and the institution of marriage and childbearing and so forth, the fact of the matter is that married women with children are more likely to be employed and have a job in the United States than any other class of women. So unmarried women, even unmarried women without children, are less likely to work than married women with children. Unmarried women with children are less likely to work than married women with children. so we have this very strange
it's all
phenomenon.
around a bad demographic to be encouraging growth if we want to turn things around. I mean, honestly, I think we have to begin to recognize, and I think you'll agree with this, parents, but you tell me, we have to begin to recognize that when people are drawing from the taxpayer dollars that are collected by government, but they're not putting anything back in, then that becomes a drain on the rest of those who are working to try to make up the difference for that. And so the entitlement problem that we have is that these folks obviously don't work and produce, but they collect. And in that circumstance, they're actually compounding the government spending that's going on. And then the rest of us who are working, we have to make up that difference. Am I right?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's a massive transfer of wealth taking place here, and it's getting embedded in our culture. It's already embedded in the structure of our federal government. It works to the political advantage of liberals who advance the welfare state. But what the transfer of wealth is, it's from traditional families where the mom and dad are married, they have kids, and now in America the fact is they're both going out and working because they can't support their family unless the mother, even with young children, is going into the labor force. It's that group of people who, yes, they make more money, they tend more to own homes and so forth than the people who are not working, obviously. But the government needs to tax that family because that's really where the large flow of income is happening in the United States. Take their money and then hand it over to the broken family, the unmarried woman who's had the baby, who's on welfare, that's reflected in these statistics, maybe the bum who actually is the father of her child who isn't married to her, who also is on government programs, who may be on disability, who may be getting food stamps, who may be in public housing. There's no doubt that the government statistics bear that out. And, I also put in my story some data, which I think is a better data set, a fuller data set that comes directly from the Census Bureau. This data from HHS comes indirectly from the Census Bureau. But if you look at the Census Bureau data directly, they also count people on Medicaid, people in public housing, people on women, infant, and children program, and some other programs that are means tested as being on welfare. When you count those people in, according to the Census Bureau, there's 108 million Americans who are on welfare in 2011. That equals 35.4% of the American population that was on welfare. And then if you add on to that people who are getting non-means tested government benefits like Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, unemployment, you get 151 million Americans in 2011 who were on taking some kind of government benefit. That's 49% of the population in 2011 was getting some kind of government benefit. The same database of Census Bureau statistics shows there were only 86.4 million Americans working full-time in the private sector in 2011. So you had 86
Wow, Terry, you know what? I've
Americans.
got to stop you right there because we have to do a station identification break. Can you hold on for about 2 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, great. You are listening to Conservative Commandos radio show. We are talking with Terrence Jeffries from CNSnews.com about our record high of Americans on welfare. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and all around the world on the internet with our new broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRive.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And you can listen to Conservative Commandos radio show anytime, any day by calling 832-999-1199. Use your cell phone at no extra cost. Please check out our website, theconservativecommandosradioshow.com and ccrshow.com. We'll see you after the break.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. EnjoyAbaco.com.
As I sail across the Sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
EnjoyAbaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from CCRS Studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do, Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And our guest this segment is Terry Jeffrey. He's the editor-in-chief at cnsnews.com. Terry, thanks for holding through the break. We do value your time. You know, Terry, charts are great. They really are, and I would encourage our listeners to go on to cnsnews.com, Google your name, and get this article, because these charts are really terrific in pinpointing the problem. It's one thing to see the numbers down on paper, but I think the charts really bring it into perspective. Terry, the day in 1994, then President Bill Clinton said the era of big government is over. I guess he was wrong about that, wasn't he?
Yeah. And he didn't have sexual relations with that woman either.
Well, I think, that is how he won re-election just a couple of years later. But, Terry, there's some really interesting statistics and charts in your article. And, one of them, and you and Adam have been talking about this, 23% of women ages 16 to 64 received welfare benefits in 2011. And that was like almost 2.5 years ago now that these figures have come out. But what else surprised me, Terry, was this. 19.2% of the men ages 16 to 64 receive welfare. Wow. You talk about the bums, Terry? They're the bums.
Right. Well, there's no doubt about it. And as I said, this is a very narrow definition of welfare. This is only TANF and food stamps and SSI. So it doesn't count the men who are on Medicaid, and it doesn't count the men who are in public housing and some other federal programs, which would bring the number way up.
Terry, when we talk about the bums, and I'm going to get a little bit some of my conservative friends out there might not like hearing what I'm about to say. But Terry, do you think it's time that we start DNA testing children on welfare and trying to find out who the fathers are and make the fathers of these children responsible for supporting and raising them?
Well, I think, as a moral matter, the fathers are responsible. Now, they're obviously not living up to their responsibility. Neither are their mothers. And, personally, what I would do is start eliminating these welfare programs. Mm-hmm. Before the 1930s, there were no welfare programs on a federal level in the United States. And really until the 1960s, we didn't have extensive welfare programs. We had pretty limited ones. So this is a fairly recent phenomenon in the United States of America. If you had a child in the United States all the way up till, the 1950s, you were responsible for taking care of that child. And if you couldn't do it, there were local charities and perhaps local or state government programs. There were no federal government programs. So I honestly believe we ought to simply roll back the entire federal welfare state and then leave it up to local communities and states and private charities what to do in those circumstances where someone is unwilling or incapable of taking care of their own children.
Well, definitely we have a breakdown in the family. And Terry, whenever we have conversations like this, and I love these conversations because I learn a lot from guests like you, reminds me of what Rick Santorum said and was highly criticized when he had 3 or 4 things how to avoid poverty. 1 was graduate from school. 2 was get a job. And 3 was don't have children until you're married. And I think that, Terry, how do we bring our country back to those ethics and morals?
Well, the way to do that's the only way to do it is to bring them back to the ethics and morals. Rick Santorum is exactly right about that, and I talked about earlier my column I wrote earlier this year that went through the documentation from the Census Bureau that shows that exactly what Rick Santorum is saying is absolutely true. In fact, if you want to find a relatively wealthy person in the United States, find a man and a woman who are married to each other, who went to college and have kids. Demographically, that's the wealth. I'm not talking about super rich people, like Bill Gates. That is the upper middle class in America today, but it absolutely is tied to a moral foundation. I'll tell you about another politician that ticked off the left was my old boss, Pat Buchanan. When I worked for him in his campaign in 1992, he talked a lot about what he called the culture war, and he stood up at the Republican convention in 1992, gave a primetime speech just before former President Ronald Reagan, and he said that there was a culture war raging for the soul of America. It wasn't about who gets what. It was a religious war about what we believed in. And, Bill Clinton and his campaign and the liberal press, they just went crazy that Pat Buchanan said there was a religious war for the soul of America. I believe that then. I believe it now. If Americans turn away from belief in God, if they turn away from belief in and adherence to the moral order that we have both from Revelation in the Bible and from our rational minds that God gave us, we can discern from the moral order of the universe in which our founding fathers wrote into the Declaration of Independence. If we turn away from those things, which we are doing, we are doomed as a society. And the place where the doom of our society is most manifest today is in the breakdown of the family and into the advancement and even glorification of immoral forms of non-family relationships like homosexual relationships, people living outside of marriage. That is just an absolute defiance of what any civilized society is founded on. And that is what our cultural elite is doing in America today. So if we want to turn this around, the first thing we have to do, we have to have leaders who are willing and have the courage to stand up and tell the cultural left, you are wrong because God is not on your side. That's as bluntly as you can say it, but it's the truth. And, the whole welfare state thing comes ultimately out of that. It is a turning away from the moral law, which is God's law, to man's own law, which is wrong. Whittaker Chambers, who wrote that great book Witness, and who had been a communist, and then turned around and became a Christian and became a leader of the right in America, said that the fundamental problem with the Soviet Union is it rejected God and it thought they could remake society according to rules that man made up himself. And Whittaker Chambers accurately wrote back in the early 1950s that the American left was predicated on that same premise as the communists in the Soviet Union. He was absolutely right.
Now, Terry, this is Anna Little again. I think we've got to talk a little bit about what welfare, what entitlements do to the American spirit, the spirit of the individual, and collectively the American spirit. I mean, how can we be an exceptionally strong nation in any form when we are allowing folks who are able-bodied and capable of working to sit home and not work, but receive the fruits of someone else's labor? I think we really need to examine what that does to the American psyche. Now, the person who's on welfare, they're stuck because they're now used to receiving a certain amount of money. If they step out to go to work, they lose it all, and then they're working for equal to or less, and so they see that as a loss, and so they're not going to step out of that situation. In the case of the single-parent household, we were focused on the women with children, but single-parent households will do. That person has to wait until their child grows to a certain age before they can manage to get out, because the daycare also becomes an issue when they head out to work. And not only are they equal in income, but they've now got an expense they didn't have before. So, I mean, what we're teaching these folks is stay put, you're not capable, don't do anything, because we're going to take care of you. And what does that do? It depresses a person and it traps a person. Am I right?
You are right. And I tell you, a few years ago I wrote a book called Control Freaks, where I tried to explain sort of my understanding of what's happening to America and what our government is doing to us. I spent a lot of time looking at the pioneering history of the United States and the attitude that Americans from before the founders, from the very first people who came here, had about the idea of being a pioneer. And I know even when I was a kid, cowboy movies and movies about the West and movies and books about people going out in the wilderness in the United States were sort of a staple of our popular culture. They're not anymore. I think they're politically correct at this point. But the real truth is that the very first Americans who came here from other parts of the world knew they were going out into the wilderness and they had to take care of themselves. They knew they were pioneers. And they knew they couldn't rely on anybody else. They had to rely on themselves and their family and then a little bit on their neighbors, and that was it. And one of the big complaints that the Founding Fathers had, and one of the reasons behind the Revolution, which too few people understand and is not taught well enough in our schools, is that after the French and Indian War, when Great Britain gained control of the Ohio Valley and all the land out to the Mississippi, this was before the Louisiana Purchase, which happened later, they had promised the Americans who fought in that war, including George Washington among them, that they would get land grants. The king promised them land. And the only place that land would be on the other side of the Appalachians out in the Ohio Valley. Plus other people coming to America and children growing up on their father's farm in Connecticut or New Hampshire, wherever, that's where they have to go. But the king, as soon as the war was over, George III, issued the Proclamation of 1863 that said no one could go out and settle in the land beyond the top of the Appalachians. That really angered our Founding Fathers. They cited it in the Declaration of Independence, and they were very mad. But once America became independent...
Well, Terry, it's amazing how you can cite all of this history, and I think we're going to have to break, and it's too bad because this is very interesting, and we need to hear more about this. Perhaps you need to write an article based on all of this history, or point out the one you've already written if you've done so. Tell our listeners where they can follow you and where they can get more information about the HHS report and other projects you're working on.
Well, they can come to cnsnews.com and follow my reporting and my columns and so forth. And my book, Control Freaks, which they can get on Amazon.com, talks about the pioneering history of the United States and how we sort of stuffing it up.
So, see, listeners, it's out there already. Go get it at Amazon.com. All right, Terry, thank you so much for taking this time with us. It's always too short when we have you on the show, but you've got to come back and see us again soon, okay?
Thank you very much.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And this is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, around the world on the Internet. Check out our Internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And Anna, We have a new guest with us today, and I always love it when we can bring on new voices. And the honor of the introduction is yours, Anna Little.
Thanks so much, Rick. Listeners, we get to speak with Steve Wilson this afternoon. Steve Wilson is a writer and a journalist. He serves as the Mississippi Bureau Chief for Watchdog.org and began his career as a sports writer. He had worked for the Mobile Press Register in Alabama, LaGrange Daily News in Georgia, Highlands Today in Florida, Macomb Enterprise Journal in Mississippi, Biloxi Sun Herald in Mississippi, and the Vicksburg Post in Mississippi. His bachelor's degree is in journalism with a minor in political science from the University of Alabama. And he has served 4+ years in the United States Coast Guard. After his high school graduation, he's a native of Mobile, Alabama. CCRS listeners, please welcome Steve Wilson. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're glad. Listen, you've got probably one of the most important topics of the day, voter fraud in Mississippi's U.S. Senate race. Well, that is just all over the social media. And we are talking about a Republican primary, and we thought Republicans were the good guys. Talk to us, Steve. What's going on?
Well, the biggest thing that's going on is there's, of course, the Free and Fair Elections advocacy group, True the Vote, that they filed 2 motions, one of which is a temporary restraining order that would stop the alleged destruction of election materials by several parties which were named. And also they filed a lawsuit to try to gain access to some of these counties to examine their poll books. And the reason why this is so important is in Mississippi, the way things are done in the primary, if you vote in the Democratic primary, you are ineligible from voting in the Republican runoff. And what True the Vote and the Chris McDaniel campaign are alleging, that there were Democratic voters who voted in the June 3rd Democratic primary, but crossed over illegally to vote for Thad Cochran, who's the...
Very interesting. So it is being alleged, and I have seen this on the social media being discussed, but it is being alleged that a Republican incumbent used Democrat votes to win a Republican primary. Did I get that right?
Well, that's kind of a twofold thing, because the problem the True the Vote has and the McDaniel campaign has are the illegal crossover votes. But what isn't being discussed, too, is the number of Democratic voters who did not vote in the Democratic primary and who went ahead and voted in the GOP runoff, and they were totally by their rights within the law to do so. And that's got a lot of the Tea Party people here in Mississippi. They're very up in arms about that.
Well, I would be, too. I mean, basically, you work hard within your own party, and you stick with the whole primary system, and they're feeling hoodwinked at the end, and I think it's appropriately so. Now, is this something that it can be proven that the incumbency actually encouraged, or is it something that Democrats spearheaded toward trying to pick the more defeatable opponent for the general election?
I don't think it was an organized effort. I just think that it happened kind of that they, of course, the Cochran campaign, not officially, of course, but through various groups that were friendly with them, did a lot of robocalls, did a lot of radio ads targeted at Democratic voters, told them that, hey, if Chris McDaniel gets elected, he's going to take away various government programs. He's going to cut federal government money flowing into the state, which I don't know if y'all know this, it compromises 40% of our state budget down here, which is a lot of money. And
yeah,
they really
but it also it seems to me if they were micro-targeting with robocalls Democrat voters in a primary situation, that's odd, isn't it?
It is, but I think what they're, and I'm just speaking from my own opinion, of course, not from any report, but I think that their calculation was, okay, we've got the party, it's divided. You have the establishment Republicans, the Haley Barbour, the Governor Phil Bryant, who's our governor now, obviously Thad Cochran, Senator Roger Wicker. And then on the other side, you've got the Tea Party, and the vote shows is is in the June 3rd GOP primary. It's almost split right down the middle. And I guess they figured that they could not break off enough of the Tea Party people to vote for Senator Cochran, so they decided, okay, what's a group that we can go after and get their votes? And they figured it would be easier to go and get the Democrats. And I'm not.
But aren't there deadlines now for? Now I'm sure this is true in my state, but aren't there deadlines by which a Democrat would have to switch parties in order to vote in a Republican primary?
Well, we have an open primary system here in Mississippi, so no party affiliation is taken. So that's led to a lot of people are talking about, and I think that I doubt with an election year coming up we're going to do anything to seriously reform it. But I think that there's at least going to be some talk of maybe we need to reform this system.
Right. Because, you know, in my state there is a deadline, and the Democrat cannot vote in the Republican primary unless they've switched parties in advance. It is open to those who haven't designated a party. So an independent or a non-declared, really, is what we're talking about, can walk in and vote. And so it's been common to target those undeclared. But that's less offensive, I think, in a primary situation because that person hasn't declared a party. When you're dealing with a target of someone that's going to be your opponent, you're targeting groups that would be your opponent, at least assumedly, in the general election to come and choose you as a candidate, which they're then going to try to defeat you later. I mean, this is just crazy. And so I think I understand some of the upset.
Well, I think one thing, too, that the Cochran campaign decided not after, I think that, to be honest with you, the prevailing wisdom before the primary was that there was no way that McDaniel was going to unseat the six-term state senator. It's not.
Yeah, I know a little bit about that. They said that about me in Jersey too. We won the primary.
You know, and you know how it is in sports or politics. You've got nothing in the bag. You can't assume victory. And I think that there was a lot of issues with Cochran. I think he didn't even want to run for a sixth term. There was a lot of rumblings that he wanted to go ahead and retire, and he decided kind of at the last minute, and I think he was behind on his funding, and I think that he was kind of struggling as far as building his campaign mechanism, and McDaniel kind of was able to get in there and get the void and really get people really excited, because I noticed where I live in the Jackson metro area, and I just noticed the Chris McDaniel people were out in force with flags. Mm-hmm. They were excited to vote for their guy, and I just didn't see that on the other side. And people that I told that I thought that McDaniel had a better than even chance of pulling out the primary looked at me like I was crazy.
Well, guess what? You weren't crazy. And if it were a fair fight, and I do think that we're dealing with some unfairness here, if it were a fair fight and we were fighting it among Republicans, McDaniel probably would have won. And that's why I think there's such a concern here about voter fraud, because if a Republican incumbent is taking advantage of voter fraud in order to win a Republican primary, it is particularly appropriate for Republicans and conservative Republicans to stand up and fix that. And I think that's exactly what True the Vote is trying to assist with in your state. Now, we're going to have to go to a break really quickly, but can you introduce a little bit, and I mean like a minute and a half or so, what is True the Vote doing? Because after the break, we'll get into that a little more.
Okay, well, they're just, like I said, they filed a temporary restraining order to get the to stop the alleged destruction of election materials, and they also filed a lawsuit that would compel the counties to allow their volunteers to go and look at those poll books and see if people allegedly crossed over and voted, who voted in the Democratic primary and crossed over and voted in the GOP runoff.
Okay, so they're doing the analysis appropriately. Are they getting cooperation from the various counties in providing the information necessary to complete the analysis?
From what I've heard, it depends. A lot of counties have been helpful, and a lot of counties, unfortunately, are kind of confused, and some of them have actually thrown up some roadblocks.
Okay, so in throwing up the roadblocks, what do they have to do? What does True the Vote have to do to get those roadblocks moved out of the way so this analysis can be done properly?
Well, I think what's going to happen is the circuit clerks who run the elections at the county level are just going to have to open up the poll books. We've got a state law that compels the clerks to redact all Social Security numbers and all birth dates from these things. And I think there's been some confusion, and I think that's one thing that I hope is a learned lesson from this election going forward.
Okay. Well, we are going to have to go to break right now, and it usually lasts about 2 minutes. Can you hang on during that break for me?
Sure.
Okay, great, because we're not done talking about this very important topic. Listeners, we are speaking with Steve Wilson, who is the Mississippi Bureau Chief for Watchdog.org. We're talking about voter fraud and the Chris McDaniels race. I'll call it the McDaniels race. And we are coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia and around the world on the Internet, with our broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And you can listen to the Conservative Commandos radio show at any time, any day by calling 832-999-1199. Please check out our website during the break, conservativecommandosradioshow.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. EnjoyAbaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
EnjoyAbaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia. And if you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show, Monday afternoon, log on to VigilantLibertyRadio.us. But you can also hear our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. We're speaking with Steve Wilson. Steve is a writer and a journalist. He serves as the Mississippi Bureau Chief for Watchdog.org. Hey, Steve, thanks for holding through the break. We appreciate your time.
Not a problem. Glad to do it.
Steve, in your article, you write here that True to Vote founder and president Kathleen Engelbrecht, who's been a guest on this show several times, said in a media release, quote, if the affidavits we now have regarding the destruction of election documents and other similarly stunning findings are true, then no Mississippian, no American can trust the results of this election. Steve, there's been a lot of elections like that where I think people in Mississippi and any state across America should be suspicious of election results. Give you an idea what I'm talking about, Steve. In 2008, there was an election for president. There was a guy by name of Mitt Romney running. Remember that one?
Oh, yes, all too well.
Well, I like talking about this because we broadcast from Philadelphia. Steve, there were 59 voting districts in the city of Philadelphia, encompassing over 19,000 votes, that Mitt Romney didn't get a single vote. Not a single vote. Not a single hanging chad, not a single mistake. 19,000 votes. Mitt Romney didn't get a single vote. So voter fraud is not unique to Mississippi. But, Steve, I have a solution, and I wanted to get your idea about my solution about voter fraud. And this is what it is, Steve. Prosecute people who are found to have voted fraudulently. Steve, do you think that would stop voter fraud?
I think in some ways it would, but I think some people, I think you're going into the criminal mind, and when people decide they're going to break the law, I think that they cross the Rubicon, to use the old cliche, and it's not, they believe that they're arrogant enough to believe they won't get caught. And I think that anyone who tries to use voter fraud to get someone elected fraudulently, I think they're willing to cross that Rubicon and take their chances.
Well, I think you're right, Steve. They will. Some people will. But I think if voter fraud was prosecuted, there is a lot of people out there who would think twice. You know, Steve, if we didn't have laws, there would be a lot more crimes committed. And one of the things that prevents those crimes from being committed is when people think, gee, I better not speed or I might get a ticket. Okay? Just to give you a simple example. But I think that if people believe that there is a chance or a likelihood that they would be prosecuted if they're found to have voted fraudulently, they wouldn't do it, Steve. And I think what has happened is here in this country is voter fraud is not being prosecuted enough.
I think that. I totally agree with you. And here's something else to ponder, and I just thought of it now. When you think that a game, if you're a voter, an honest voter, and you think the game is rigged, why would you even bother? Do you see the problem with the system with that?
I do. I totally do. And that's part of the problem. And, you know, Steve, it's like I only think that voter fraud is perpetuated and allowed by people that have something to gain, and therefore you've got to also do something about that too. Steve, I want to ask you a couple more questions before I hand you back over to Anna Little. You know, Steve, if we had Hillary Clinton on this show, which we would never do, you know what question she'd ask you right now, Steve? What difference does it make now? What difference does this going back and this election took place 2-3 weeks ago? What difference does it make now?
Well, I've noticed with the left, and this is my lifetime, that they have a tendency to, okay, let's have a do-over until they get the result they wanted, kind of like a certain election down in Florida. And, we've got the result we wanted. It's over. We don't need another redo.
Steve, let me ask you this question, and you are under no obligation to answer it, okay? It's actually a two-part question, Steve.
Sure.
Were you a McDaniel supporter?
I stay objective, and I remain neutral. It wouldn't be good as a reporter for me to choose either one side or the other. I've tried to play it down the middle.
Well, let me then ask you this. Have you spoke to McDaniel supporters?
I have, and let me tell you, they're not happy. Another thing, they're not going to turn out if this thing isn't overturned and Thad Cochran is the definitive GOP nominee for the Senate race in November, they will not turn out and vote.
Does that open the door for the Democrat?
It does, but I think I think that the Cochran campaign's thinking is they'll stomp and kick their feet now, but when it comes time in November, there's no way that they'll hand the Senate over to Harry Reid. No way.
All right. We're speaking here on the Conservative Commandos radio show with Steve Wilson. He is a writer and a journalist. He serves as the Mississippi Bureau Chief. Boy, I'm having a problem with that word today. For watchdog.org. And with that, Steve, I'll hand you back over to Anna.
Okay, well, Steve, I'm glad Rick is sending you back because I do want to talk a little bit about what you've just alluded to as far as the general election. It's very, very important, in my opinion, that these fraudulent voter situations be exposed and then corrected, that measures be put in place for it to be corrected. But what happens when we get to the general election? I think it's interesting. This has gotten to such a head on the Republican side of the ticket that there is such animosity between McDaniels fans and Cochran fans. Is there a way this gap is going to be bridged? I mean, and you've said that they won't let Harry Reid have the Senate, but are they going to remember it's Harry Reid we're fighting by the time we get to the general election? And what can we, as activists in the movement, do to kind of bring this together so that we don't give it back to Harry Reid in the general election?
Well, recently I put out a call to the Tea Party activists here in Mississippi because I just wanted to kind of dip my toe in the water and see what was their feeling and mood. And my inbox got absolutely slammed with people who wrote me back and said, there is no way I vote for that. I'm staying home in November. That was the overwhelming sentiment among the people.
So, that's what we need to be addressing, listeners. We can't have folks take their toys and go home and allow a liberal progressive to end up winning this fight at the end of the day. I am certainly a McDaniels fan. That's where I am. I believe in grassroots campaigning. I may or may not have strong feelings about Mr. Cochran, but I think McDaniel won that race, and I think it's wrong of the Cochran folks to be trying to target the enemy in order to try to defeat someone within their own party. If you've got to go that far, it's time for you to go. That's my opinion. But at the end of the day, you cannot hand this over to liberal Democrats in any race. That's a local race, a county race, a state race, a federal race. It doesn't matter. Because when you hand it over to the enemy, well, then you're part of the enemy, too. You can't do that. You've got to make sure that the best of the two on that general election ticket wins, even if it wasn't your guy in the primary. And I think this conservative movement needs to get on board with winning the general election. A Republican is better than a Democrat. A conservative Republican is best. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think what's going to end up happening, I think that there's going to be a general kind of decision-making process with the Democratic voters in the state. They're going to go, okay, there is a really good chance that no matter how good a campaign Travis Childers runs, who's the Democratic opposition, who, by the way, I think at the last rating I saw when he was in Congress, he voted 80% of the time with Nancy Pelosi's Democratic leadership. So that's something that's going to be pretty unpopular with a large proportion of the state. But I think what they're going to have to do is look and say, okay, are we going to just go vote for Travis Childers, who might not have a chance? And that's going to be the key for him. He's going to have to make voters believe, yes, I have a chance to knock off a 6-term senator. And he's got to make that case. And
the McDaniels crew is an effective campaign tool, and I think they should be working for whoever goes into that general. And, okay, so we're going to have to cut it now because it's time for a break. I'm so sorry, time just goes too fast for us, and you're going to have to come back and see us again, Steve. Tell our listeners where they can find your work.
Well, all of our work's available at watchdog.org, and click on states. We have a great New Jersey reporter. We have great reporters in the Pennsylvania area and Mississippi. If you want to read all of my stuff on the McDaniel, Thad Cochran Senate race, click on Mississippi.
Hey, Steve, I want to get the last word in here. Sorry, Anna. Steve, thank you for not coming on our show and yelling "Roll Tide." I appreciate that.
My mother actually went to Auburn, so...
All right, got to go. Thanks, Steve.
leader in production systems technology, to be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's A-B-A-C-O. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, the smiling coast I know, only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do Monday through Friday, and around the world on the internet via our internet broadcast partner, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And joining us now is Dan Gaynor. Dan is the Vice President for Business and Culture of the Media Research Center. Dan is a veteran editor with more than 2 decades experience in print and online media. Dan, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
It's a pleasure to be back, and TGIF.
Thank you, and same to you, sir. Dan, we've asked you to join us today to talk about an article from the Business and Media Institute. Media praises BBC's censorship of climate skeptics, attacks dissenters. Dan, when I first saw what the BBC was going to do, I'll be honest, I was in disbelief.
I wasn't. The BBC stinks. BBC,
well, I agree with that, but the fact that they were that blatant about it.
American propaganda around the world. The only reason why the CNN International isn't really awful is it's because it's better than Al Jazeera International and BBC International.
Well, Dan, what I meant by that is they were so blatant about it.
But they don't care. The libs don't care. I mean, this is the problem. The press, which we have a fantasy in America about the press. And I spent decades in journalism. I'll tell you, I love journalism. Love news media. It's best jobs in the world ever had. Even better than this, we're working in journalism.
Mm-hmm.
But journalism is stocked like you're stocking a fish pond, filled with liberals and the occasional random, other fish that thinks differently gets either ignored or chewed on by the first fish. And so, and I mean, that's in America. And America is leaps and bounds better than most media in other parts of the world. I mean, you look around the world, the international media are, they're called from like the Socialist Workers' Party, and they're die-hard activists, huge left-wingers. There's no concept of free press. There's no concept of responsible journalism. I mean, these are either state operators, like you get from RT, like Abby Martin, who is just a complete hack, or some of these. China has their own operation. Al Jazeera, which I feel bad that Egypt locked up 3 of the Al Jazeera quote journalists, but I understand they backed the Muslim Brotherhood. Mm-hmm. Al Jazeera actually had a birthday party for a guy who was a terrorist. So on this level, that's why we tend to, people tend to think, well, the BBC is responsible. There may have been a time in history where the BBC was actually a responsible news organization, but not very much in my lifetime. I've been on the earth more than I care to say.
Dan, it's interesting. A couple of interesting things here in this article from the Business and Media Institute. The Telegraph UK reported on July 4th, interesting day that they released this, that the BBC had trained 200 staff members to, quote, stop them giving undue attention to marginal opinion, specifically naming the question of man-made climate change. And according to the Telegraph, the BBC found that there was still an over-rigid application of editorial guidelines on impartiality, which sought to give the other side of the argument. And science correspondent Sarah Kaplan called it false balance. False balance, Dan Gaynor.
Yeah, and that's the way the left has decided across the board in America, because their reaction is just very telling, even in the media, that there's no longer any attempt to do professional journalism. Part of this, the internet forced all the cockroaches out of the woodwork. And, the idea that all these years that there was this pretense that we had professional journalism, we found repeatedly after journalists retired, whether it's Helen Thomas or Walter Cronkite, these lions of journalism. Last year, one of the Washington Post managing editor for decades retired, and he wrote this huge anti-Republican screed that ran in their paper. They're all liberals. Hire liberals. They hire their friends. They hire their buddies who went to the right schools. They promote liberals. They reward liberals. They give them awards. They're the ones who get the Pulitzer, etc. It is a game. But what has happened is, because it's such an important game, is that they have influenced so much of our lives that it alters the course of history. I mean, imagine for a second, that the media had covered the Watergate story like they've covered the IRS story. Watergate started out as one of the most insignificant robbery stories you could ever imagine. In an era, today's era, where there are much fewer journalists covering local news and crime log and stuff like that just doesn't get covered, that story would have been missed entirely.
Right.
Nobody would have noticed it. Richard Nixon would have gone on to finish a full 4-year term, his second 4-year term. He would have gotten the United States out of Vietnam, as he did. He would have launched the EPA, as he did. And he would have retired. And you know what? Liberals would look back fondly on him. They would say, what a great liberal president he was. And then we'd find out some of the stuff later on, and they wouldn't care, just like they found out about Bay of Pigs and John F. Kennedy, all his parade of mistresses and having sex with interns in the White House and stuff like that. All that just becomes history book stuff.
Well, Dan Gaynor, I think the difference is back in the days of Watergate, we had a true media that reported on stories, right?
And
we don't have that now.
We had more journalists doing so-called news.
Right.
I mean, you have more local journalists. What you had were extremely powerful. I would almost call them local, instead of monopolies. I almost call them media monarchies. They're controlling the media outlets in each city. Sometimes there was more than one. My first job in journalism back in the 80s was at the second or the third daily paper in Baltimore. Two of them were affiliated, and the other one was the third. Was the competitor. And that still had 150,000 circulation. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a lot of media, but now we get the IRS coverage, which is just a blip. Well, if they had covered Watergate, we're like, oh, there's a blip, we better dig further, and then they would have found missing emails and missing information, documents destroyed. They would have covered the Washington Post. If it covered IRS, like it covered Watergate, Washington Post would have a front-page story about the IRS every day of the rest of the Obama administration. Obama would go down in history as the biggest criminal to ever be in the White House. When they weren't doing the IRS story, they'd also be doing the VA story, the NSA story, the spying on other countries, the helicoptering in for Texas and ignoring the key crisis down in Texas. They would have skewered Barack Obama so much that they may have gotten him impeached or forced to resign instead of Nixon. Hey, Dan, that is the power of the press.
Hey, Dan, we're going to go to a break. Could you just hold for just 2 minutes?
Sure.
All right, you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Dan Little and Rick Trader coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet via CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And if that's not enough, you can now hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Our guest this segment is Dan Gaynor, Vice President for Business and Culture of the Media Resource Center, talking about media praises BBC's censorship of climate skeptics. Be right back.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show. We are broadcasting live from our flagship station, WNJC 1360, and around the world on the Internet. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening Eastern Time, log on to patriotsride.org. For a rebroadcast of yesterday's Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 5 p.m. this evening, please go to cprworldwidemedia.com, click on the Listen Live link. You can also listen to a repeat broadcast of today's show tomorrow afternoon by going to vigilantlibерtyradio.us, clicking on that Listen Live link. And now you can listen to Conservative Commandos Radio Show anytime, any day by calling 832-999-1199. But right now, listeners, we are talking with Dan Gaynor, Vice President for Business and Culture of the Media Research Center. And Dan is talking to us about our favorite topic, that climate hoax, I call it. But it seems the BBC doesn't agree. You know, Dan, I just want to touch on accountability and that First Amendment and how sometimes one tends to get in the way of the other. The BBC says here that across our programs, the number of scientists and academics who support the mainstream view, obviously the man-made climate change is the cause there, far outweighs those who disagree with it. But then there's this little fact, this little rub here. In 2010, Climate Depot released their comprehensive report of more than 1,000 scientists from around the world who dissent from the mainstream alarmist view. Dan, what do we do about this? I mean, here in America, we obviously preserve free speech rights, freedom of the press rights on the First Amendment. But don't we need to put some kind of accountability when misinformation is being blatantly circulated through these mainstream media outlets? Help me out here.
Well, the problem of accountability is the only way to do accountability in that way is to have government do it, and that's the last thing I want.
I agree there. I don't trust government at all.
Yeah, a few years ago, somebody from one of the local news outlets around here didn't like a piece I wrote for then the Baltimore Examiner and ran a headline that said Dan Gaynor and then something offensive. And my mother happened to see it on the web. And she got upset. She called me back. She said, you know, what can you do about this? I don't want to do anything about this. That's their right. That's their free speech. They have the right to say that about me. And I would defend their right to say that about me. The problem we've got here is that Huffington Post, Salon, and Washington Post, all three thought this was a good idea to silence free speech and to keep certain people out of the news media. That's not something we want government to get involved in, but that is something where what has happened is the American press is so depraved of ethics and morality that it doesn't even like the idea of neutrality. And then, at the same time, I'm a member of the Society of Professional Journalists. They have a wonderful code of ethics that I've been using for several years. And they're in the process of trying to change it and gut some of the key provisions that we use in dealing with an activist press. Because they are tired, I'm sure, of having people like me rub their noses in it. So that's the problem. And the way to fight that is when these things happen, when you turn on your TV, when you pick up your newspaper, and you guys broadcast across a couple different areas, so I won't pick on a particular newspaper. But when you pick up one of those newspapers and you find some lefty garbage in the news pages, don't just call the editor and complain. Open up the paper and pick somebody who's local, who's got a big ad in that paper. A big ad. Pick an auto dealer. Auto dealers hate when people protest them. Call them up and say, hey, you're supporting this lie. You're supporting this propaganda. Not only am I not going to buy from you, I'm going to post on Facebook how you support this propaganda. I'm going to post on Twitter how you support this propaganda. And then I'm going to get some of my friends together. And if it's an auto dealer, this is the way to do it. You get some protest signs, and you go out there and say, look, I'm going to show up in front of your car dealership on Saturday. Because the realities of car dealership, people don't buy that many cars during the week because we're all at work. What they do, they come in on Saturday. And if you're walking around with signs out on the sidewalk, peacefully, not causing trouble, but peacefully protesting that dealership saying you fund propaganda at whatever news outlet, they are going to freak the hell out. They're going to call up their ad salesperson. That ad salesperson is going to call his boss. His boss is going to call the publisher and they say, oh, my God, they're going after our wallet. They're coming after our pay. They're trying to shut down our ability to feed our employees.
Okay, well, this is something I think people in our movement are very capable of doing. I've seen all kinds of roadside rallies for one cause or another, perhaps a campaign, perhaps an issue. Well, maybe this is something we're going to need to start doing on these topics when there is blatant misinformation being spewed by this mainstream media. And, it's a tough job, and you've got to stay on top of it, but perhaps that's what we're going to have to do.
Yeah, and you don't have to have 100 people out there. I mean, you could have 10 people, particularly if you got a little kid, but 10 people out there standing out there marching on the sidewalk with intelligently written, cleanly produced signs, no typos, no errors that people can use, and out there, because you don't want to protest in front of the paper because the paper will ignore you. But if you protest in front of key advertisers, they keep them going. I remember it was, I think, one of the Connecticut papers that published the list of all the gun owners. Well,
yes, I remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't very long before all sorts of people from around the country called all their advertisers, and the only advertisers they were getting, because it was a Gannett paper, the only advertisers they were getting were larger ads that ran in multiple Gannett papers. All the local people pulled out because nobody wanted to have anything to do with it. They were toxic. If you can make a media outlet toxic, then you can squeeze them until they scream, and then they will listen. They will have to listen, or they will simply go out of business.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't go out of business. They would react, and that's what you're looking for, some kind of a reaction. The difficulty with the mainstream media, obviously, is it's not like a corporation where you can just find their advertisers and whatnot. You have to, as you're saying, look for the ads because that's where the money is. That's what's
A few years ago, actually maybe several years ago now, one of the car dealers got upset by a review, I think it was, of one of their cars by the LA Times. And car dealership advertising, a lot of it comes in combination with the car company. And what they did, they told the LA Times, well, we're not going to advertise in your paper at all. And they pulled something like, I think, $20 million of advertising out of the LA Times before the LA Times completely crumbled. I think probably crawled all the way from LA to Detroit, begging them to fix it.
Hey, Dan, I think this is a very powerful weapon, economic. For instance, Costco pulled Dinesh D'Souza's book. There was such an outrage from people, they put the book back on their shelves. So this is a weapon that we must use.
Yeah, and I mean, and it wasn't even so much the economic weapon there. Social media is a weapon.
Right.
We're very good at using this in our organization.
You're the best.
I guess last year it was with all the problems with MSNBC. We had at one point, we told our grassroots army to call Comcast. Not the company, the board members. And we sent them to calling the board members on the weekend at their home phone.
That's a powerful... Hey, Dan
Gaynor,
Gaynor.
not happy with us. can't remember how many tens of thousands of people call board members on their home phones in a week.
Well, that's what we need to do. We need to show our faces out there. Hey, Dan, we got to wrap it up. Dan Gaynor, Vice President for Business and Culture of the Media Resource Center. Dan, where can people go to follow the work that you guys do?
Well, you can go to mrc.org where you can sign up for our newsletters and stuff. You can go to our very popular blog at newsbusters.org. I also write for foxnews.com. I also write for theblaze.com. So all of those places are wonderful and great, and it's always a pleasure being on with you guys.
And Dan, we love having you on as a guest. You're one of my favorite guests.
Well, thank you very much. I always have a good time, as you can tell.
Take care. God bless.
Thank you. Bye.
And that was Dan Gaynor, Vice President for Business and Culture of the Media Resource Center. Hey, Anna, we have a major announcement. We have a really great guest coming on Monday. You know, the talk of the internet is Dinesh D'Souza's new movie, America, Imagine the World Without It. Well, here on the Conservative Commandos radio show, as a guest, we're going to have Gerald Mullen, the Academy Award-winning producer of Schindler's List and that of Dinesh D'Souza. He helped them create 2016 Obama's America. Well, Gerald Mullen is going to be a guest here Monday on the Conservative Commandos radio show. So listeners out there, please tell all your friends and relatives and whatever to tune in our show. This is a movie that, just as we were talking about with Dan Gaynor, excuse me, that we have to get our voices and our faces out there. We also have to support our side. When movies like America, Imagine the World Without Her, when movies like this are produced, we must support these kinds of movies, don't we, Anna?
Yes, we absolutely have to, and I think that it also is an opportunity to shift culture. You know, culture is very much shifted by Hollywood, and so if we've got conservatives out there making movies, they're giving our side of the story, and that's shifting the culture. And the more we can move them up the charts as far as attendance at these movies, so that the statistics show that there are a number of us out there espousing this moves the cultural barometer in our direction. So please get out there and support Dinesh, support America, the movie, and look for other conservative media producers out there. Support their work as well.
We had an opportunity to talk with Dinesh at CPAC, and, you know, I was telling him how much I thought about 2016 Obama's America and how it kind of helped shape some of my views. And he says, well, Rick, if you like 2016, you're going to love America. He says it's a much better movie, so I'm going to be seeing it this weekend. And again, Monday afternoon, please tune in to the Conservative Commandos radio show, because we're going to have the producer, director of that movie, Academy Award-winning producer Gerald Mullen here on the Conservative Commandos radio show. So please, everybody, tune in and help us get the word out there. Anna, we got about 30 seconds. Any last thoughts?
Don't forget to take a look at what's going on with ISIS in the Middle East. Nuclear arms in the hands of these extreme jihadists is not a good thing. Use your social media, get the word out there, put the pressure on. We've got to do something about it.
All right, Anna, we got to wrap it up. I want to thank you for being my co-host today. I also want to thank our other guest, Terry Jeffrey from CNSNews.com, Steve Wilson from Watchdog.org, our most recent guest, Dan Gaynor from the Media Resource Center. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you next week on the radio.
Thank you for listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. Huge thanks to our co-hosts, contributors, patrons, callers, and our friends at WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460, where we broadcast live every Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 to 4 p.m. Central. Look for us on the internet at www.ccrshow.com. Until next time, we are the Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.